What's up everyone, Darcblade here with another Hunter's Guide to Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. In this video I'll be bringing you another endgame build, this time for the bow. Now what is an endgame build? Well, it's a build that is constructed from some of the rarest weapons, armors and decorations in the game. They also feature curious crafting, although it's not to the extent where the augmentation skills found on the armor are unobtainable. Now as always, if you find these videos helpful, informative or even entertaining, please consider leaving a like on it, as well as subscribing to the channel, as I try to bring you a variety of builds for a variety of different playstyles. Now when it comes to the bow in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, it's a very strong weapon, able to utilise the various elements in the game effectively to bring down monsters quickly, so long as you're countering them with the correct element. On top of that, in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak's endgame, there are a lot of skills that allow you to have infinite stamina, reducing the need for stamina based skills. The downside of the bow is it's quite fragile, but this build I'm featuring here factors in all of these aspects. And so with that I present to you the Berserk Bow build version 2.0. This build utilises the Berserk skill combined with various other DPS skills such as Strife to allow us a build that adds survivability, stamina management and of course massive damage output. So for this build I'm using the full Chaotic Gormagala armor set. Now this is either referred to as the Chaotic set or the Nephilim set depending on if you're male or female, but the stats on the two armor sets are exactly the same. So I've got the Chaotic Helm, Chaotic Mail, Chaotic Vambraces, Chaotic Fowls and the Chaotic Greaves. For your Petalace, this is down to personal preference. I'd recommend either the Demon Petalace for some extra damage, or if you're a little bit less comfortable with the build, go with the Absolute Petalace for some more health and survivability. As for the Talisman, thanks to Title Update 5, Talismans can make or break builds. They are incredibly powerful now. So I'm using a Talisman that has attack boost at level 3 on it, Adrenaline Rush at level 2, and a tier 4 decoration slot. Now as for the bow, you have a lot of options here, a bow for each element as this is an interchangeable elemental bow build, but for the most part I'm using spread bows. For the purpose and demonstration of this video, I'm using the Gold Rathian bow representing the dragon element. If you wanted to use the fire element, I'd recommend going with the Rathian bow, for water then the Hemator bow, for ice the Velkhana bow, and for thunder the Kezu bow. You can also use the Valstrax bow if you want another alternative for the dragon element. As for the curious crafting on the weapon, prioritize getting a decoration slot upgrade first, and then afterwards focus on increasing the elemental damage of your weapon. Now as for the decorations, you've got a fair few to play around with. So first of all, the decorations in your weapon may differ. I recommend taking attack jewels. This can be an attack jewel +4 if you can fit it. As for the Rampage decoration, I've gone for the Daora's Soul, which gives us extra affinity after attacking a monster continuously for a short period of time. Elemental Bane is also an alternative here to increase damage against monsters who are susceptible to elemental damage. Then gone for the Mighty Bow Jewel, Critical Jewels, a Shockproof Jewel, Expert Jewel, Quick Load Jewels, Dragon Jewels including a Hard Dragon Jewel. If you were using a weapon with a different element, you would replace these Hard Dragon Jewels to match whatever new element you are using. Then gone for a Spirit Bird Core Jewel, Spread Jewels, and then finally a Fervor Jewel. So if you've done what I've done here, you'll have fluctuating stats, unfortunately, thanks to the various skills we are using in this build. Your raw attack can range from anywhere between 460 and 472, your dragon rating can range from 49 or higher, and your affinity can be anything from 50% to 100% depending on the buffs you have active. On top of that, you'll also have a fluctuating defense that can be anywhere between 877 and 927, as well as fluctuating elemental resistances that by default are strong against water and ice, but unfortunately weak to the other elements. As for the switch skills, these are down to personal preference, although with the bow I'd always recommend taking the Dodge Bolt switch skill. So when it comes to the skills, first of all you have Critical Eye at level 7, this increases the base affinity of this build. You'll then have Attack Boost at either level 4 or level 5. Attack Boost increases the raw attack value of this build, and at level 4 or above grants us a percentage bonus to our raw attack. You'll then have Resentment at level 5. Resentment is a skill that increases our raw attack whenever there is red health on our health bar. And with this build and how the Berserk skill works, you should always have Resentment active. You'll then have Dragon Attack at level 5, increasing the dragon rating and the dragon damage of this build. Remember, if you're using a bow with a different element, you'll replace the Dragon Attack to match whatever new element you are using. You then have Critical Boost at level 3, increasing the damage of our attacks whenever they crit a monster. However, this only applies to the raw portion of an attack, not the elemental or ailment portion. You'll then have Spread Up at level 3, increasing the damage of spread arrows. You'll then have Coalescence at level 3. Coalescence is a skill that whenever we remove a blight or abnormal status from our hunter, will gain increased raw attack, elemental attack and status build-up. This works well in unison with Bloodlust, which we'll talk about in a moment. Next up is Strife at level 3, which is a skill that increases the elemental attack and affinity of our build in proportion to the amount of red health we have on our health bar. This coupled with Berserk means that for the majority of the time we should receive a massive buff from this skill. On top of that, Strife is a skill that also grants us infinite stamina so long as we have about 60% red health on our health bar. There is a separate video elsewhere on the channel if you want more information on the Strife and Berserk skills. Anyway, next up is Reload Speed at level 2. Reload Speed is a quality of life skill that allows us to automatically equip coatings. You'll then have Bloodlust at level 2, which is a skill that gives us a modified Frenzy virus. Again, there is a separate video elsewhere on the channel if you want more information on the Bloodlust and the Frenzy virus, but too long didn't read. It's a small purple bar that fills up above your health bar, and whilst this is occurring, you'll gain increased attack, evasion, and stamina use reduction, but should the bar fill up, you'll be affected with the Frenzy virus, indicated by a red debuff, which results in you taking a lot more damage. This modified Frenzy virus will also drain your health, so that's something to be aware of. You fight off this effect by dealing enough damage to a monster or using null berries, to which if you fight off the virus by dealing damage, you'll be buffed instead with increased affinity, as well as healing you for the health it drained. Anyway, next up is Adrenaline Rush at level 2. To be honest, getting this at level 1 is more than enough. This is a skill that after you perform a perfectly timed dodge or evade, which works well in unison with the dodge bolt skill, you'll gain increased raw attack. You'll then have Berserk at level 2, which is the namesake of this build. Berserk is a skill that whenever we switch to the blue scroll, our entire health bar will turn red. However, whilst in this state, we cannot faint from monster attacks. Instead though, whilst we're in the Berserk state, our health will drain naturally over time. This can ultimately kill us, and should we take hits from a monster, the amount our health drains is increased. You can stop this by switching back to the red scroll before going back to the blue scroll again to reset that increase to the health drain. Again, like I said, there is a separate video if you want more information on the Berserk skill. Although 2 tips with the Berserk skill is to first take the Super Dango recovery food skill and use the hopping skewers on it to increase its effect, as this will counter the health drain slightly, as well as use a healer Palico, and you'll have a much more comfortable time using the Berserk skill. Anyway, next up is Bow Charge Plus, an essential skill for all bow users that increases the maximum amount of bow charge levels we can perform. Normally when you look at the bows in the armory, the last arrow charge level is greyed out. It's not always greyed out on all bows, but the majority of them it is. Bow Charge Plus basically unlocks this for us. Anyway, next up is Evade Extender at level 1. Evade Extender is a skill that increases the distance at which we dodge and evade. It's a quality of life skill to be fair. You'll then have Blight Resistance at level 1, reducing the duration of elemental blights by 50%. You'll then have Mail of Hellfire at level 1, which when using a red scroll will decrease our defense, but increase our raw attack. Whilst using a blue scroll, it will reduce our elemental resistances, but increase our elemental damage. It's a bit of the glass cannon skill, but the Berserk skill counters this element slightly of this dangerous skill. Anyway, you'll then have Spirit Bird Call at level 1, a quality of life skill that I tend to always use, that allows us to receive the effects of random Spirit Birds at fixed intervals during hunts. You'll then have Blade Scale Hone at level 1, which is a skill that after dodging and evading an attack at the right time, with our weapon drawn, it will boost the damage of our close range coatings, making them almost on par with power coatings. You'll then have Element Exploit at level 1, which is a skill that increases the elemental damage when attacking body parts which are severely weak to the elements. Elemental values of 20 or above is classed as being vulnerable to this skill. Anyway, you'll then have Burst at level 1, which when we continuously land hits on a monster, it will gradually increase our attack and elemental attack. You'll then have Intrepid Heart at level 1, which gives us a little blue bar above our health bar that will continuously fill up as we land attacks on a monster. Once full, it allows us to ignore damage reactions and take reduced damage from a single attack that would knock our hunter back. It's a little quality of life skill. And then finally you'll have Shock Absorber at level 1, which disables the damage reactions when you hit a friend or a friend hits you. This basically replaces the Brace Jaw and the Flinch Free skill. So those are all the skills. Let's move on to the next section where we talk about the Curious Crafting. Now, as these are endgame builds, they do feature Curious Crafting, but with Curious Crafting, as well as the amount of decorations we have, you don't always have to have the same that is shown in these videos and come out with different results. You can play around a little bit. For example, if you get something via Curious Crafting that eliminates the need for a certain decoration, you can replace that decoration with something that you weren't able to obtain via Curious Crafting. So for the Chaotic Helm, I've got a point in the burst skill, as well as a reduction in the critical eye skill, and an additional tier 1 decoration slot. For the Chaotic Mail, I've got a tier 4 decoration slot upgrade, as well as an additional tier 1 decoration slot. For the Chaotic Van Braces, I've got an additional tier 1 decoration slot, a point in Blight Resistance, and a point in the Blade Scale Hone skill, as well as a reduction in Resentment. Then for the Chaotic Fouds, I got a tier 4 decoration slot upgrade, a point in Mail of Hellfire, and a reduction in Resentment. And then finally for the Chaotic Greaves, I got a point in Intrepid Heart, and a point in Evade Extender. And so that is the Berserk version 2.0 build. But every build out there has various pros and cons. No build is perfect. Even endgame builds, while they may be strong, they have downsides that they may be difficult to craft. So for this Berserk build, its biggest pro is its damage output. Utilising elements and countering monsters with the correct one they're weak to, you'll be able to bring down foes incredibly quickly. On top of that, this build has awesome survivability thanks to the Berserk skill, countering the fragile nature of the bow. And then finally for the pros is that this build has infinite stamina. Thanks to Strife and Berserk, as well as some savvy health management, you're able to keep that infinite stamina going for long periods of time, reducing the need or even eliminating the need for stamina based skills. But of course there are cons. One of the biggest cons is the Berserk health drain, which requires you to change or alter your normal playstyle in order to manage the skill. And the final con is, unfortunately, this is a decoration heavy build, requiring some of the rarest decorations in the game. But regardless, this is a strong endgame build, able to take on all the content that Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak has to offer. This build is slightly different to the previous version of the Berserk build in that it doesn't feature Bloodbright, and our health management is instead being taken care of by our Palicos and Dangos. But there are lots of options, and like I said, if you're looking for a strong build to take on all the content in the game, I'd strongly recommend this one for the bow. But what are your thoughts? Please leave a comment down below, and until next time, I've been Darcblade, bringing you another endgame build, this time for the bow in Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak. Hope you enjoyed the video, thanks for watching, subscribe and like for more.